Hello, everyone. Felipe here. Happy Monday. Hope everyone is doing good and had an awesome weekend. So, as you know, I'm here to keep you up to date with current market news and teachings. This is in no way, shape, or form financial or investment advice. This is for educational and entertainment purposes only. So I'll go ahead and jump right into it. To kind of give you an idea of what this video is about is basically a risk arbitrage, similar to the ones I've made in the past, where basically a company is acquiring another company for a certain amount of money, and then there's the potential to make the difference in what that acquisition price is as to what the share price of the company currently is. So in this case, Amgen's, which is a pharmaceutical company, they are going to acquire Horizon Therapeutics for $28 billion in a merger acquisition. So what I'm going to be doing is basically jumping into Horizon Therapeutics financials to get an idea of what's going on at there, right? So let me swap over here. So here we have Horizon Therapeutics' most recent filings as of March 31st, 2023. So right off the bat, cash and cash equivalents, not bad. They haven't had much fluctuations there from last year, from 2022. So they have about $2,311,000,000 in cash. As you can see here, this is in thousands. So we just add 3 zeros over here. That gives us the $2,311,000,000 in cash. Inventories, something that I like to look at, is basically not increasing, not decreasing dramatically. But that just basically means that they have a completed products that they can then sell, and they're not basically building up on inventory, meaning they can't sell things. Current assets about more or less same as last year, so the company hasn't had much growth from last year. Goodwill stays the same. I like to look at this. Why? Because if you see this starting to increase dramatically for no reason, it's kind of a red flag, because goodwill is basically the brand of a company. And how much is a brand really worth? I mean, yeah, you can say that some brands are worth more than more. So it's just example, McDonald's, just their franchise is worth a lot of money, so their name is worth a lot. But that's typically what goodwill means. The brand, what is the brand of the company's worth? Total assets a little under last year, so the company has kind of had negative growth from last year. Total current liabilities, we have it's actually gone down from last year. That's always a good sign. Less liabilities, right? And total long-term debt, which is $3 billion they have in long-term debt, which not actually declined a little bit from last year. Let's see here. Nothing overall too bad, or nothing bad stands out in the balance sheet. What I'm getting from this is that the company hasn't really grown much from last year. But it's had, from what I was seeing prior to that, this company has kind of like exploded since the COVID lockdowns, right? But what hasn't? Everything has gone crazy, right? So total shareholder equity, slightly above last year, $5,095,000,000 in shareholder equity. Total liabilities and shareholder equity, which should equal the same as total assets. That's where the name balance sheet comes from. So overall, nothing alarming in the balance sheet. See, gross profits are slightly down from last year. So again, it just shows that the company has not grown, actually declined a little bit from last year. One thing that did stand out to me was net income has dropped dramatically from 2022. So that is just something to keep an eye on. Net income in 2022 for the same period was $204 million. And then over here we have $54 million. I mean, they're still making money, right? It's not negative net income, so they're still profitable. They seem to be losing money in interest rate swaps, so cash flow hedges. So their hedges have been going against them. They have a $7 million loss in interest rate swap hedges. So whoever's managing the company's hedges, which is most likely the CFO, Chief Financial Officer, is not doing a good job on that side of things. So comprehensive income, 48 million. Again, company hasn't grown from last year. It's actually been kind of stagnant, but nothing alarming that I can see. And yeah, that's basically kind of going into the balance sheet a little bit and the cash flow statements, which the one thing that stood out to me basically was net income declined from last year, but I'm not really seeing anything alarming in the balance sheet. So Horizon Therapeutics is a global biotechnology company focused on the discovery, development, and commercialization of medicines that address critical needs for people impacted by rare autoimmune and severe inflammatory diseases. The company's pipeline is purposeful. It applies scientific expertise and courage to bring clinical meaningful therapies to patients. Horizon believes science and compassion must work together to transform lives. The company's commercial portfolio is currently composed of 12 medicines in the area of rare disease, gout, ophthalmology, and inflammation. I'm not very familiar with these biotech companies, but that's why I love reading these financial statements for companies, because it allows you to learn these industries, the verbiage they use, the lingo they use, and so forth, and kind of how they operate, which I find very cool. Here, a lot of these words I probably can't pronounce, but I'll do my best. So this is basically the commercial portfolio of this company in terms of the medicines it markets and sells and has patents for and produces. The two big ones that this company own, medicines that they basically have in their portfolio, which from my understanding have no competitors, meaning that these two medicines have no competitors in the market. Tepezza, which is for reducing eye bulging and double vision. It also improves the signs and symptoms of thyroid eye disease, which the abbreviation for that is TED, including eye pain, redness, and swelling. Tepezza is a prescription medicine used to treat TED, which is thyroid eye disease. And then Krystexxa, which is also pegloticase injection. It is an enzyme protein that targets uric acid. When there's too much uric acid in your body, it can form into sharp crystals that cause painful gout attacks. So this medicine basically helps lower uric acid levels in your body by changing it into a substance called allantoin that's removed through your urine. So these are the two main medicines in this company's portfolio that makes the most money for them. And supposedly they have no competitors for these specific prescription markets, which gives this company a sort of a competitive advantage in terms of this specific area of medicine, right? So they have about 12 other medicines they produce in their portfolio, but the two main big ones are these two that produce the most amount of money for the company. The others are Revicity, Lazina, Pro, Sibi, Actimune, Pensade, Ryos, Bufanin, Quincer, Duix, Vimovo. I probably butchered all of those, but man, these are difficult words to pronounce. So kind of going into the whole acquisition side of things. So yeah, here basically these are the two medicines that produce the most amount of money for this company. You can kind of see it here. They basically produce the majority of the profits that this company does in terms of selling these specific prescriptions. Tepeza, you can see here, it's for 2023, for the first quarter, they sold $405 million worth of that medicine. And then Cristexa, they sold $186 million worth of this medicine. Is practically the majority of the profit or revenue that this company produces, which these apparently have no competitors in the market. The other one, which is kind of up there, is Revicity, which sold $90 million, which that's a lot of money, considering in a prescription sale, right? Crazy how much money Big Pharma makes. From last year, kind of all these are down in terms of sales, but that just gives you an idea of what I was talking about. These are the two main medicines that are prescriptions that this company produces that generates the majority of its profits. And that is probably the reason why Amgen wants to acquire this company, because of those two specific medicines. Majority of the sales come from the United States. You can see here. So majority of the market for this company is in the United States. And then I'll skip some of this fluff and go into the actual acquisition information. So on December 12th, 2022, we announced we had entered into a transaction agreement with Amgen Inc. or Amgen and Pilartree Limited, or Pilartree, a wholly owned subsidiary of Amgen. So see if I could skip some of this stuff. Companies Act 2014 of Ireland, or the scheme. As a result of the scheme, we would become wholly owned subsidiary of Amgen. So that basically says, as of December 12, Amgen made an offer to buy this company. At the effective time of the scheme, or at the effective time, holders of our ordinary shares will be entitled to receive $116.50 in cash per ordinary share or the consideration or equity reward will be treated as set forth in the transaction agreement, such as the exercise price payable per share under such options. C, if granted to non-employee members of our board of directors or held by a person who had, as of the date of completion of the transaction, is a former service provider of our company, be canceled or converted into the right to receive a cash amount equal to the total number of ordinary shares subject to RSU, which is restricted stock units, immediately prior to the effective time, multiplied by the considerations. And B, if not granted, an individual described in Clause A above be canceled and converted into restricted stock units, or an Amgen RSU determined in shares of Amgen common stock. So basically, current shareholders of this company, Horizon Therapeutics, it seems like they're going to be given the option of either receiving $116.50 a share for the stock, or Amgen's RSU stock units. So basically, it could be either or, right? In terms of how this acquisition will occur, which is typical with mergers. So that kind of goes into that. The Irish High Court has set a hearing date of May 22nd, 2023 to consider our application to sanctions of scheme. We will inform the Irish High Court in advance if the hearing date needs to be adjourned to a later date as a result of conditions to closing, including required regulatory clearance not having satisfied by the scheduled hearing date. The transaction is expected to close shortly after the Irish High Court issues an order sanctions the scheme. And we continue to expect that the closing of the transaction will occur during the first half of 2023. So they were supposed to close shortly after May 22nd. However, the FTC recently announced that they were going to attempt to block the merger, which is common with all these mergers. FTC is always trying to block all the mergers due to maybe competitive issues in the market and making it more expensive, in this case, for consumers to purchase these medications. So that has changed, which recently caused Horizon Therapeutics stock to basically sell off a bit. So from my understanding, they've recently a judge will decide if Amgen can go forward with its $28 billion purchase of Horizon Therapeutics. He has considered evidentiary hearing on the matters in September. So supposedly now they have a hearing in terms of this whole merger acquisition that's going to occur in September. So now that means that this is probably not going to close, if it is even going to close, until some point around that time, which means basically that the stock might potentially fluctuate, and someone believing that this merger might actually occur might potentially give the opportunity to participate in the risk arbitrage, right? So Judges John Nees said he would likely take about 4 weeks after the hearing and to make a ruling. The case is being heard in the federal court in Chicago. So basically, they're supposed to go have a court date in September, and shortly after that court date, the judge will make a ruling whether he will rule in favor of this company actually allowing them to merge. So let me swap over here and kind of show you a little bit of what I'm talking about. So basically, the Federal Trade Commission is moving against drug companies and industry's middlemen as part of Biden's administration push for lower drug prices at the pharmacy counter. Amgen is, according to the FTC, attempting to leverage the monopoly power of two top Horizon drugs that have no rivals. And those are the drugs that I was just talking about, which is Tepezza and Critexa. I mean, if I'm even pronouncing it, but those two drugs basically have no rivals in the pharmaceutical market, which is why Amgen seems to be interested in acquiring this company. So FTC has recently, as of May 17th, which they being so, it seems that they prevented the acquisition from closing shortly after the May 21st date, which now seems to have been pushed to September for the court hearing, and depending on the judge's ruling. So the Federal Trade Commission is suing to block biopharma giant Amgen Inc. proposed acquisition of Horizon Therapeutics PLC, saying the deal would allow Amgen to entrench the monopoly position of Horizon treatment for two serious medical conditions. By acquiring Horizon, Amgen could use rebates on its blockbuster drug to pressure insurance companies and pharmacy benefit managers to favor Horizon treatment for thyroid eye disease and chronic refractory gout. The FTC said those treatments, Tepezza and Krystexxa, have no competitors, the agency said. So by offering attractive rebates on high volume drugs such as Enbrel, Amgen can get preferred placement for other products on issuers and PBM's list of drugs, the FTC said. So the value of such rebates on Amgen's blockbuster drug, the agency said, may make it difficult, if not impossible, for smaller rivals developing treatments to compete with Tepezza and Krystexxa to match Amgen's offer. So basically, this acquisition, according to the FCC, would make it very difficult for any smaller competitors to be able to develop any kind of prescriptions that compete with Tepezza and Krystexxa. So that's where the whole block, in terms of them believing these companies to be a monopoly in that specific market. So that's why the FTC decided to block the merger. So proposed $27.8 billion deal announced late last year is the largest pharmaceutical transaction announced in 2022. Amgen is disappointed by the FTC's decision and remains committed to completing this acquisition. The company said in a settlement after working for several months to address the FTC's questions. Amgen said it had overwhelmingly demonstrated that this combination possesses no legitimate competitive issue. The issue with these pharmaceutical companies, they're very, very powerful. They have a lot of government connections, typically. So it would be interesting to see whether the FTC's complaint holds, considering the FTC's regulations are typically weak when it comes to merger acquisitions. So Amgen made a commitment not to bundle or offer multiple discounts tied to Horizon product at issue in the FTC's complaint. The company said in its statement, Horizon said in a statement that it also holds no plans to bundle any of the rare disease treatments, and that the deal has the potential to accelerate the availability of important rare disease medicines to more patients worldwide. So yeah, basically, FTC recently blocked them, and that prevented what seemed to be the closing of this merger that was supposed to happen shortly after May 21st. Now it doesn't seem likely to happen until September after the court hearing and the judge decision. So that basically, you can see here recently, the stock price was basically almost at the level reaching the acquisition price, which is $116.50, which Amgen is going to buy or pay each shareholder per share of Horizon Therapeutics. So after that announcement of the FTC block, the stock kind of sold off, and it's been a little volatile since then, which now it seems that this might not occur until the earliest September. which I have no position in this. I'm just watching it and curious, because if the opportunity does arise and the price goes lower between now to September, and I believe that, not that I believe, but let's say the probabilities of this acquisition occurring goes up, it creates a beautiful opportunity for risk arbitrage. So currently, where the stock stands approximately to where the acquisition price is supposedly going to be, it's a 16, almost 17% return. Not bad in terms of short-term gains. That's pretty amazing. But then the risk is, if this doesn't occur, and the merger does indeed get blocked, the stock is going to sell off pretty viciously. So that's where the risk comes in. So that is a risk arbitrage for sure. Beautiful example right there. As another example that I've come across recently, and in this case in the biotech industry, which is not at all something I'm familiar with. But it gives me the opportunity to kind of look into and learn more about how these companies function and so forth. So yeah, that's basically the risk arbitrage there. And I'll leave you guys with a quote and a strategy. So this quote basically kind of applies to this, which I'll kind of explain. So this is by Warren Buffett, and a thing he's known for saying is, "What I love, of course, is a big castle and a big moat with piranhas and crocodiles." So he likes his companies to have barriers of entries, basically is what he's saying, right? So he's basically referring to a business with competitive advantage and barriers to entries. And an example of that would be beautifully displayed here, Horizon Therapeutics. They have basically a monopoly over their prescriptions, Tepeza and Krystexxa drugs, which they have no competitors currently in the market. So that is in a way, and a competitive advantage in terms of that specific area of the pharmaceutical market, right? And then a strategy similar to arbitrage, but it is an arbitrage, but it's called pure arbitrage. So basically profiting from the discrepancy in the price of a security in two different markets. Example, commodities and currencies are quoted in markets around the world. If two separate markets quote a different price on the same underlying, buy in one market, sell in another, and pocket the difference. A beautiful recent example of this would be the kimchi premium, where a few years back you could buy Bitcoin on the Japanese exchange and sell it in the South Korean exchange for an immediate profit due to the discrepancy in prices between the exchanges. I'll give you a quick summary of why that basically occurred. So the kimchi premium, basically, the Korean Bitcoin market is well suited for analyzing bubbles for several reasons. And these are some of the reasons why the kimchi premium occurred in the Korean market. So first, short sales of Bitcoin are not possible, and Bitcoin futures do not exist in Korea. So basically in Korea, there was no ability to short Bitcoin or Bitcoin futures, which futures are basically derivatives. So you can either short them or go long. So that being said, there was no ability to short the Bitcoin market in the Korean exchange. So when arbitrators are not able to short overvalued Bitcoins, the additional buyers tend to be optimistic. Second, the identical payoff structure of Bitcoin between two countries allows us to control Bitcoin fundamentals. Thus, we focus on the links between the kimchi premium and trading volume. Third, the Korean Bitcoin market is the leading market in the world. Many Koreans are interested in cryptocurrencies than any other country, in spite of Korean government regulation during the sample period. So South Korea is big on technology, and that is the reason why cryptocurrencies so popular over there, and the reason why the kimchi premium occurred during that period, because you couldn't short it, you couldn't short Bitcoin, and two, basically Koreans love technology, so they were optimistic about it. Therefore, Bitcoin sold for a premium in the Korean markets. So you can basically you could have in the past purchased it in the Japanese market, and you could have sold it for a premium in the Korean market, and that is where the pure arbitrage example comes into play. So yeah, with that said, basically, if you like what I said and would like to hear more, please like and subscribe. I would appreciate that. Thank you guys for your time, and see you guys soon. Have an awesome weekend.